Today's podcast is brought to you by the Bioceuticals Integrative Oncology Workshop with Dr. Lise Altschuler. This full-day program will run between the dates of the 20th and 28th of July across Melbourne, Sydney, Gold Coast, Adelaide and Perth. The intensive class will explore key concepts and therapeutic integrative strategies for breast, prostate, colon and lung cancers, as well as how to support toxicities associated with conventional treatment. By the end of the day, you'll be able to confidently implement this important aspect of patient care into your clinical practice. For more information and to register for this critical event, please visit the Bioceuticals website at bioceuticals.com.au. This is FX Radio, and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. And with me on the line today is Professor Mark Cohen. Mark is a registered medical practitioner with degrees in Western medicine, physiology and psychological medicine, and biomedical engineering. He is currently chair of the Australasian Spa and Wellness Association, a board member and past president from 2000 to 2007 of the Australian Integrative Medicine Association, AIMA, a member of the RACG AIMA Joint Working Party on Integrative Medicine, and a board member of the Global Wellness Summit, as well as sitting on the editorial boards of a number of international journals. Moreover, he's the co-author, along with Associate Professor Leslie Braun, of Herbs and Natural Supplements, an evidence-based guide. Mark is also a regular media contributor for major Australian newspapers, also ABC Radio National, many other regional stations, television appearances on ABC, SBS, Channel 7, Channel 9 News, current affairs and also lifestyle programs. Mark is active in research into the efficacy of integrative therapies such as organic food, nutritional supplementation, herbal medicine, yoga, acupuncture, electromagnetic field therapy, breathing techniques and wellness metrics. And I'm sorry, that's all we've got time for today. So I'm so glad to have you on the line with me today, Mark. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm tired just listening to all of that.
I got to say, I've known you for quite a few years, and that is such a mouthful. You have done a lot.
I guess I'm persistent.
I guess you are. Tell me about your evolution, though. I want to know what you were like as a kid.
Always into new experiences.
Yeah.
And always trying to find out how to have the most fun. And in fact, I went into medicine originally thinking that'll teach me how to have the best fun, the healthiest and happiest life. And after 4 years, I realised it taught me a lot about disease and pathology, not much about health and well-being, which was what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So I had this sort of convoluted academic path, 20 years at uni, doing various other degrees, trying to understand wellness.
So were you always directed towards wellness, or was that just something that you thought, I'm not happy with that, so I've got to look elsewhere?
No, I always figured that, if you were really well, you wouldn't have to have this sort of stopgap approach to medicine where you just remediating and patching up diseases, and also that it was originally it was a personal thing. I wanted to know how I could have the happiest, healthiest, most fulfilled life for myself. And figured medicine, you learn about life and death and everything in between. That'll teach me that, and it's been a long journey, and I'm still learning. But I've always been interested in how do you maximise performance, how do you maximise resilience, how do you enhance your ability to cope with stress and avoid disease rather than how to treat disease once it's in place.
Can I delve into just a little bit? I know this is such a huge topic for you because I remember seeing some research for you for 15, 17 years ago. So you've got a long history of research in integrative medicine. Tell me about some of the research that you've done and what have you seen in the development of research in general?
Well, it's a long story. Yeah, the original research I did was in the mid-1980s, looking at early life experience and later disease. That was for my honours degree, and then I subsequently did research in Eastern and Western medicine, looking at Chinese medicine and how you translate the concepts of Chinese medicine into medical scientific terms.
Yeah.
And I've found that I'm really comfortable being the bridge, whether that's the bridge between Eastern and Western medicine, between science and spirituality, between the commercial world and the academic world. I'm really comfortable between disciplines, and I like to bring in diverse areas of information and sort of integrate them, and hence integrative medicine was a natural fit for me.
Indeed, that all of that research and garnering of that has culminated in you co-authoring the book Herbs and Natural Supplements with Leslie Braun. Tell me about that evolution. How did the book evolve?
Yeah, well, I mean, Leslie and I, we were together at school. We're the same vintage, and throughout our careers, we used to see each other at different events. And she was doing in the pharmacy world what I was trying to do in the medical world, and that's bridge the complementary and conventional aspects of each world.
Yeah.
And then after a few years, she came up to me and said that she was going to author this book on herbs and supplements, and she wanted a medical co-author, and she invited me to co-author with her. This is about 14, 15 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And she put it to her. I said, look, that would be great because I want to learn about herbs and supplements. I didn't actually learn much about nutrition in my medical degree, and I realised how important it was. So I figured that would be a great learning exercise for me to write a book about it with her. But I also said to Leslie that if you're going to be serious about this and trying to bring this into the conventional world and into academia, you need a PhD yourself. So I said to her, I'll write the book with you if you do a PhD with me. Little did I know that 14 years later, we're up to the 4th edition of the book and I'm still writing it, and she's well and truly finished her PhD and now heads up the Blackmores Research Institute.
And I've got to say that evolution of that book has been dramatic. Like the first one I had was the 2nd edition. Tell me about how it's increased in size and also usefulness.
Well, I mean, between the first edition, I think was 400 pages. And, we tried to provide a rigorous assessment of the evidence and also some practical knowledge where the evidence wasn't there to actually give practitioners and patients a perspective. Mm-hmm. And then after 3 years, the book was quite successful. The publisher wanted a 2nd edition, and we reviewed all the herbs again and nutrients, and came out with an 800-page book. So it literally doubled in size between the first and 2nd editions. Mm. And these are very small typing. This is a dense book.
Yes.
And then another 3-4 years later, we were asked to do the 3rd edition, and that went from 800 to 1,200 pages. And now the 4th edition's just come out this year, and that's in 2 volumes, 2 separate volumes, and it's 1,600 pages. So, and that's partly because we've added some extra monographs of different herbs and different supplements, and partly because just the amount of research has vastly increased in this area. And we've also had to take on additional authors to help us write it because 1,600 pages of incredibly dense information, and it's quite current information. We do our best to review the current literature and provide an evidence-based summary of each of them in each of the monographs. It's an incredible challenge, and I'm still learning. And every time we do another edition, I learn a lot. And I add. I'm very interested in the culinary herbs and the kitchen pharmacy herbs and some of the essential oils. So I really enjoy authoring those chapters. But there's just a huge global increase in the amount of research dedicated on nutraceuticals and nutrients and herbs.
I think the 2 points here is it sort of lambastes that comment that there's no evidence for nutritional supplements and that. There is. You've just got to actually type in some stuff. But the second one is for those GPs that might be sceptical but would like to learn stuff about what their patients are taking, that they can rest assured that Herbs and Natural Supplements was applauded by the Australian prescriber, the NPS, National Prescribing Service. I think it was in 2011, that this was one of the 4 best resources for use by for GPs to get unbiased information about nutritional supplements.
I mean, it's been great how the book's received. Even Edzard Ernst, one of the big critics, has sort of said this is one of the top books, and I think pharmacists and naturopaths and doctors, it's become a sort of a standard reference book, and it is seen as an authoritative resource.
Absolutely. You just can't not have it in your practice, to me.
Yeah, and I think the ability to have the electronic version and search it, and I still use it constantly as a reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way I can keep all that in my head, and so it's constantly on my shelf and gets used. And I think every GP, especially, needs to have access to either this book or something like it, because their patients are using a whole range of over-the-counter herbs and supplements, and it's the doctor's responsibility to actually understand what the potential interactions are with prescribed drugs, and also to engage patients in a discussion about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what is the most useful thing they could be doing, and then also discussing the evidence for or against it, and also the safety issues. So there really is a huge impost on doctors to actually have access. They don't have to have it all on in their head, but they need access to some evidence-based resource so they can advise their patients appropriately.
And indeed, furthering that education for integrative GPs and indeed all integrative practitioners is the upcoming AIMA conference in July 2015, and you're going to be a panel member. Can you take our listeners through your session? What's the main focus of it, and what's the highlights?
Well, it's always interesting doing panels, and one of the things I like about panels is you really never know where they're going to go. And, it allows for some spontaneity, and rather than death by PowerPoint, it actually allows for a discussion between people.
Yeah.
And I think the issues currently are how important is integrative medicine for general GPs? What is integrative medicine? What are some of the challenges that we're facing? What are the future directions? And what can GPs? And the conference, this AIMA conference, has always been very practically minded, so to give people real world practical information they can then utilise in their practice. So what are the key things that doctors can do? What do they need to do? Where are some of the resources or the further education sources? What are the key research challenges? All of these things will be talked about on the panel, and there's a top line of panelists. I think Leslie Braun will be there, amongst others. So I'm looking forward to a rigorous and robust discussion.
And what about, I remember seeing one of your earlier research pieces. What are you currently working on? And one of the things that, by the way, interested me in your bio is wellness metrics. Can you take our listeners through what that means, please?
Yeah, well, wellness is this sort of nebulous term. It sort of means everything to everybody, but what is it? What actually is it? And for me, I've in fact, even in my own personal evolution, I've been very active in the integrative medicine world for nearly 20 years now. But now I'm becoming much more interested in wellness as a discipline on its own. Mm. And for me, wellness incorporates the health of the individual, but also including the community and their environment. And, now we're understanding, we live in a climate of change. The whole environment's changing. We're understanding more about the impact of our environment on our own health, but also the impact of networks and community and social connection on health. And, while you can be healthy as an individual on your own, to be well, in my view, you need to be, grounded in a physical environment, in a community.
Yeah.
So the research I'm trying to do now is trying to understand how we actually can measure that. And when we get measurements of wellness, both, and that includes, for example, measures of pollution, air quality, biodiversity, in terms of environmental measures, measures of amenity and security and financial security, and then also measures of health and social connectivity, and a whole lot of different multidisciplinary measures together to come up with a metric that it's not just valuable for an individual to understand, but then a group can actually look at it and undergo what's called socially augmented cognition. And that's when you can think about things as a group that you wouldn't think about as an individual. And that comes up with different solutions because to actually change our well-being, it's beyond an individual's capacity to change what the council uses on their spraying on the roadside, or what food is in the tuck shop in the school. But if as a school community we understand that hey, our school kids are have all got,
overweight,
or there's higher incidence of asthma or allergy or whatever it is, then as a group you can actually decide to do something about it.
So socially augmented cognition.
And we've now got the tools in terms of the smartphones and the sensors and other different devices that allow pooling of that data and to make that data accessible to groups, whereas in the past it was only accessible to either governments or health authorities or scientists.
Mark, two last questions because I know you're very busy, but the first one is AIMA, the AIMA conference. What would you say to sceptical GPs or indeed specialists who might be wondering about this? What would you say to them about inviting them along? What would they learn?
Well, I mean, I think skepticism is a good thing, but you need to have an open mind. The issue is not so open your brains fall out. But I think it's beyond question now that the patients engage in a whole range of complementary therapies, and patients actively take over-the-counter herbs and nutritional supplements, and that there are a whole range of therapies that are safe and are effective that aren't normally taught in medical school and aren't part of a normal GPs or specialists' repertoire of therapies. Yet to ignore them, there's a real risk that these doctors are going to harm their patients or provide treatments that are harmful and have side effects when there was a safer and possibly even more effective treatment available. And that's a tragedy for each patient, but it's also a risk to the way they practice. And I think it's really important that all doctors understand, the idea of first do no harm, the idea that, you want to go into the more lifestyle interventions prior to specific interventions because they have positive side effects, not just in the disease you're treating, but in a whole range of different conditions, and also improve resilience for future diseases. So, by enhancing the body's ability to adapt and, to cope with stress and to cope with whether it's microbial stress or chemical stress or psychological stress, those approaches can be very effective for specific diseases. And no matter what sort of specialist you are, you need to include those. And then to realise that this is not alternative medicine. This is complements everything else you do.
Yeah.
And very often, for years I've been talking about what I call the SENSE approach, which is just stress management, exercise, nutrition, social and spiritual interaction, and education. The acronym makes sense.
Yep.
And it makes sense that they're the what I call the pillars of complementary medicine. But if you improve any one of those pillars, if you improve how you manage stress, how you move, how you eat, how you interact, or how much you understand about your condition, you'll improve your health. And that is in addition to any other specific treatment you use. And when you integrate all of those into the context of the whole person's life, that's when it becomes integrative medicine. And it's also important to realise that this is about individual patients. So I think we get sometimes a bit carried away with evidence-based practice, and we want to randomise double-blind placebo-controlled trials for everything. But that doesn't actually make any definitive conclusion for individual patients. We have to consider a patient's their own personal preferences, their own life goals, what's available and accessible to them, what they're willing to do in terms of treatment, and consider their whole life circumstance. And there's no trial that will tell you what's happening for an individual patient. So that's when the medicine's really an art, and it's informed by science. And I think that if we get too carried away just by science in medicine, then we really lose the art.
That's right.
And the art of medicine was there way before the science came in, and science changes. One day hormone replacement's in, and the next day it's out, and non-steroidals are in, and then they're out. But in terms of the art of medicine, of being a therapeutic channel for your patient, having that therapeutic relationship, that's the fundamental joy of being a doctor. But it also it needs to be informed by science. But there's an intangible element there that actually is this interpersonal connection and interpersonal therapeutic relationship that is the magic of medicine. And I think that also needs to be focused on.
Indeed. I might just point out for our listeners that all of the concepts you're talking about and the acronyms are explained in your book, Herbs and Natural Supplements, and it is a bare minimum for any integrative practitioner to have on their shelves. So, Mark, my last question just before you go is, and I have to ask this because it really amazes me. I don't know which school you and Leslie went to, but how do you guys juggle it all?
I'm still trying to work that out. I mean, it does help to have, be on the one track. Like,
Yeah.
I've been on the same track for, 30 years now.
Yeah.
So you just build up relationships and networks. It also helps to have, I surround myself with people who are much smarter than me. And that includes my PhD students like Leslie. So, and I mean, they say that, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I make sure I spend the most time, a lot of the time with, incredibly switched on, powerful, smart people.
Yeah.
And that magnifies my ability to do things.
Yeah, well done. Professor Mark Cohen, I know you have to go and I could talk to you for hours, but thank you so much for taking our listeners through what the 2015 AIMA conference will entail, but also what integrative medicine will bring for people who practice care for their patients. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Andrew, and perhaps we can do something another time.
I'd love it.
It's great to be able to chat, and I look forward to seeing you at the conference.
Excellent. This is FX Radio, and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook.